It was just after midnight in Ouagadougou. The stars above looked peaceful, but the ground was on the verge of war. Inside a heavily guarded military base, General Sangaré, tall, sharp-eyed, and decorated with medals from over 2 decades of service, was briefing his men. The room was tense. "Traore is reckless," he barked. "Too young. Too emotional. He will sink this nation into chaos. We must act before he sells Burkina Faso to the Russians." Burkina Faso was split down the middle. On one side stood Ibrahim Traoré, a 35-year-old revolutionary with charisma and courage, but no deep military background. To the youth he was a hero. To the west a wild card. And to seasoned generals, a threat. On the other side stood General Sangaré, respected, experienced and trained in elite U.S. military academies. He had the support of France and America and a quiet promise: "Take the country back and we'll support you." The people didn't know it yet, but a storm was coming. Far from the media's eye, a Russian cargo plane landed at a remote strip near the Mali-Burkina border. 6 men walked out. No uniforms. No names. Just code names. At their head, Sokol, a silent, brutal expert in covert coups. General Sangaré wasn't just speaking out against Ibrahim Traoré in private. He was organizing. For weeks, he had been holding secret meetings in military barracks across the country. Tenkadogo, Bobo de Lasso, Kadugu. Always at night. Always in silence. The attendees? Senior generals, colonels, and battle-hardened commanders who had served under multiple regimes. Men who didn't fear blood, and who believed the country was being handed over to foreign mercenaries. At one of the meetings, Sangaré stood at the head of a long wooden table, surrounded by the most powerful men in Burkina Faso's military. "Traoré is not one of us. He is weak. Emotional. He speaks like a revolutionary but governs like a child. And now, he lets Russians walk freely through our bases." He slammed his fist on the table. "The time has come to restore honor to the uniform. We strike in 10 days. The plan was simple. Seize key installations, control national radio, arrest Traoré, and install a transitional military council. France and the US had been informed in quiet channels. Their message? Handle it quickly. We'll look the other way. But what Sangaré didn't know was that someone in the room was working for Russia. Among the stern-faced generals at Sangaré's secret meeting was Colonel Doumbia, calm, quiet, and always the last to speak. Nobody knew that 2 months earlier in Bamako, Doumbia had met with Russian agents. He wasn't loyal to Traoré. He wasn't loyal to Sangaré. He was loyal to power, and Russia promised him a future as Minister of Defense. That night after the meeting ended, Colonel Doumbia didn't go home. He slipped into a dark SUV and drove to an old warehouse near the outskirts of the city. Inside, waiting in the shadows, was Sokol, the Russian commando leader. Doumbia handed over a brown envelope. "It's all here, locations, names, code words. Sangaré's plan is to strike next Thursday at dawn." Sokol scanned the papers, then looked up. "You've just saved your life. But now we'll do more than stop the coup. We'll expose it, and destroy his credibility." A convoy of blacked-out military trucks rolled silently through the capital, heading toward the presidential palace. Inside them were elite strike teams, handpicked by General Sangaré. Their mission was simple: arrest or eliminate Traoré, seize the communications center, and declare a new government before dawn. The plan was rehearsed, precise, ruthless. But from the moment they crossed the Kwame Nkrumah intersection, everything began to fall apart. As the convoy reached a checkpoint near the palace, a lone soldier stood in the road, waving them down. Before the lead vehicle could respond, boom. An underground mine exploded, flipping the truck like a toy. In seconds, Russian snipers on rooftops opened fire with chilling precision. Red tracer rounds lit the sky. The ambush was brutal. Men screamed. Some fled. But most never even lifted their rifles. 2 colonels and 1 major were dead before they touched the ground. A second unit tried to storm the eastern gate of the palace using coded access, but the codes had been changed hours earlier, leaked by Doumbia. The gate didn't open. Instead, it burst with gunfire from inside. Waiting in the shadows were Russian GRU commandos and Burkinabe loyalists, dressed in dark gear, wearing night vision goggles. In less than 5 minutes they killed 11 attackers. Among them, Brigadier Yimiogo, a trusted aide to Sangaré. 1:30 a.m. Airbase lockdown. A third team was dispatched to Airbase 511, aiming to take control of fighter helicopters to scare the city into surrender. But when they arrived, the hangars were empty. Aircraft had already been flown out under secret orders from Traoré. And on the runway, waiting in the dark, were soldiers from the Presidential Guard, flanked by a group of mysterious men in black uniforms, Russian paratroopers flown in 3 nights earlier. The attackers were outgunned, outflanked, and out of time. They dropped their weapons. Inside a hidden command bunker, General Sangaré stood frozen, holding a radio in his hand. He listened as his officers called in one after another, panic in their voices, bullets in the background. "We've lost Gate 3. Yamiogo is down." "It was a trap, General. We've been set up." Then silence. Before he could react, his generator cut off. The room went black. A metal door slammed open. Red dots from laser sights danced on his chest. Sokol, the Russian commander, stepped forward. "The people chose a lion. You chose to be a puppet. Now face your consequences." By sunrise, over 32 of Sangaré's top men were dead or captured. 6 generals were arrested. The rest disappeared into hiding. Traore had not only survived, he had crushed the most dangerous coup in modern Burkinabe history. By sunrise, the capital was quiet, too quiet. Soldiers patrolled major roads. Russian and Burkinabe armored trucks stood outside key government buildings. The air felt heavy, like something historic had just happened. At 7 a.m., the National Broadcast Tower came alive. There was no flashy intro. Just Captain Ibrahim Traoré, dressed in full fatigues, eyes blazing with resolve. He spoke for just 1 minute. "To the people of Burkina Faso. Last night, traitors backed by foreign interests tried to overthrow your government. They failed. We remain in control. We remain sovereign. We remain united." And then he walked off screen. No questions. No drama. Just strength. That speech would be replayed across Africa for the next 2 weeks. Within an hour, thousands of Burkinabe citizens filled the streets, waving flags, chanting, "Traoré. Le vrai fils du peuple. Traoré. The true son of the people." Mothers beat drums. Youths lit tires, not in protest but in celebration. At the main square, a mural of General Sangaré was defaced, burned, and stamped on. Across social media, hashtags exploded. Hashtag hands off Burkina. Hashtag Russia stands with Africa. Hashtag no more puppets. Even school children were seen waving Traoré's photo, shouting, "He beat the coup." Outside the high-security military prison, relatives of the arrested coup plotters waited in agony. A woman screamed as she saw her husband, Colonel Nikima, in chains. "They told us they were protecting us," she cried. Inside the prison, each captured officer was undergoing joint Russian-Burkinabe interrogation. Some begged for exile. Some cried. One tried to bite off his own tongue. None were forgiven. For many families, the night of the coup brought back old wounds. Burkina Faso had known years of instability, overthrown leaders, rebel attacks, foreign meddling. That night, as gunfire echoed and black trucks moved in the dark, people whispered, "Not again. Please not again." Some mothers clutched their children under their beds, praying Traoré would survive. Elderly men sat on prayer mats, trembling as if war had returned. In the small village of Puh, a woman named Aissatou, whose husband died during a past mutiny, lit a candle and said, "We are tired of blood. If they kill Traoré, this country may never heal." At dawn, as news spread that the coup failed, mothers cried in relief. One woman at the Ouagadougou market shouted, "Traoré is our son. He stood for us when others ran." Another said, "Sangaré may wear medals, but he does not carry the heart of the people." Many families brought food to the soldiers guarding the city gates, rice, yam, and tea. Some women sang war songs not to provoke, but to honor the fallen who defended the presidency. The youth especially felt a deep emotional bond. At the University of Ouagadougou, students held a candlelight vigil for the soldiers who died stopping the coup. One speaker said, "We don't want colonizers. We don't want puppets. We want Traoré because he looks like us, fights for us, and never hides." Painted murals began to appear overnight, Traoré on horseback, standing over a broken chain labeled neo-colonialism. But not all the emotion was joyful. In Kédougou, a young woman named Mariama received news that her husband, a palace guard, died protecting the eastern gate. She wept but held her head high. "He died protecting the future. Let them write his name in the sand. I'll shout it in the wind." Other widows gathered, sharing stories and tears, forming a new group. Les Mères du Courage, the Mothers of Courage. They demanded their husbands not be forgotten, and called on Traoré to build a national memorial for the night Burkina Faso nearly broke again. By the end of the week, something had shifted. Soldiers hugged civilians. Imams prayed beside pastors. Children wore Traore t-shirts like superhero capes. The fear of another civil war had brought unity instead of chaos. An old griot in a dusty village summed it up best. They tried to take the country with bullets. But Traore won it back with loyalty. And the people, with love. 3 days after the failed coup, as Traore sat in his war room reviewing security footage and rebuilding trust among his ranks, an encrypted message arrived from an unexpected place. Pretoria, South Africa. It was short, elegant, direct. To Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Africa is watching. You are not alone. When one lion roars, others must answer. If you're ready, let's talk privately. The signature was unmistakable. President John Mackay's, South Africa's iron-willed reformist, often accused of wanting to build a Pan-African power bloc. Under cover of night, Traoré boarded a small military jet headed not to South Africa, but to Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, a neutral zone. Security was tight. No phones. No press. Inside a discreet villa by the sea, President Mackay waited alone, sipping rooibos tea and staring out at the dark Atlantic. When Traoré entered, Mackay stood, extended his hand and said, "Young lion, you survived. That makes you dangerous and valuable." Over the next 2 hours, Mackay made a proposition that left Traoré both intrigued and cautious. A secret Pan-African defense pact, starting with 5 countries. A joint military training exchange with elite commandos from South Africa, Angola, and Ethiopia. The creation of a new African-owned satellite system to replace French intelligence over the Sahel. And most importantly, a shadow bank backed by African gold, to bypass Western financial controls. France and the US, they think Africa will always kneel. But what if we stood up together? Not just to survive, but to dominate our future. Traoré was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. As Ibrahim Traoré flew back to Burkina Faso, he knew the game had changed. It was no longer about survival. It was about Africa's soul. France, now fully aware of the secret Malabo Pact, moved quickly. Social media bots flooded the internet, spreading lies that Traoré was stealing public funds. A fake video of him signing a secret surrender to Russia went viral. Western news outlets began calling him the child dictator of West Africa. But in Ouagadougou the people didn't flinch. They had buried their own for him. They had lit candles in the dark. They weren't going to be fooled by keyboard warriors in Paris. Just before sunrise, a small, silent aircraft entered Burkinabe airspace. On board, the same Russian elite team that had once helped stop Sangaré's coup. But this time they weren't here to fight. They were here to train, observe, and quietly assist with building Traoré's new Pan-African military command. They didn't speak at press conferences. They didn't pose for photos. But their presence was clear. Traoré had chosen his side.